All right. Welcome everybody to our latest edition of our Facebook Live real estate interview series, where we take people into the world of San Francisco Bay Area real estate. Again, kind of the origin and the goal of why we do this is, I'm meeting a lot of people every single day. I'm meeting buyers and sellers, but I'm also meeting people that are in and around the real estate industry. So property inspectors, lenders, appraisers, financial advisors, and so on. And what I realized pretty shortly after I started was why these conversations I'm having are pretty useful, not just to myself, but would be pretty useful to anyone else who'd be interested in buying or selling property. So I said, well, why the hell can't we just broadcast this live in an interview format, casual of course, but I'm doing this with the spirit of information sharing and kind of spreading what I know to as many people as possible. So that being said, I am very, very happy to be joined today with Bob Emmett. I consider Bob a friend. Bob is with PCA Inspectors, and what they do is property inspections in San Francisco and also the Bay Area. And so I've known Bob for several months now. His work is very, very high quality. And I wanted to have Bob on board just to answer a couple questions about his business, what he does, and anything else that you guys want to know about property inspection as well. So if there are questions that you guys have along the way, feel free to ask them, and we will do that. So that's my opening spiel for now. Bob, why don't you give us a quick background of yourself and an overview of what you guys do?
Sure. Thanks for having me, of course.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. PCA Home Inspections, we do home inspections. We look at residential and commercial buildings. And basically what a home inspection does is we give a kind of a synopsis of the current conditions of a house or a building. So basically what I do is I go around the entire house or building, and from the roof down to the crawl space, go into every room and closet, look at all the different fixtures and so forth, and kind of give a full synopsis of the structural systems, as well as the plumbing, the electrical, and the HVAC systems. And then I give a report to the client and kind of give them an idea of what the current conditions of the building is. And
prior to getting into home inspections, give us a sense of what you were doing, kind of what led you to getting into home inspections.
Sure.
And what makes you so uniquely qualified?
So out of college, I started off in real estate. I did that for a few years. Then morphed into property management, and then eventually got into construction. Did that, and about 4 years ago, I'm originally from the East Coast. I had an opportunity to move to the West Coast here, and work for PCA in doing construction investigations and home inspections.
So that's why I like using Bob for my home inspections, because he actually knows what he's talking about. He's been, as he just said, in all different aspects of properties and homes. Spent some time in real estate as well. So Bob's very, very well versed and well rounded when it comes to how to evaluate and inspect a property, which is what you want. Mm-hmm. So that's your background. Tell us a bit about the company, kind of what you guys do. Is there any sort of different client types you serve, and kind of how that works?
Yeah, primarily our clients are buyers and sellers, primarily, but sometimes we also do inspections for homeowners that may have an issue with a house that they can't quite figure out what the issue is or what's causing it, so we investigate that. Or it might be an investor that has multiple properties, and they have tenants in the property, and they are looking for kind of a maintenance list of what needs to be corrected once a tenant moves out.
And you mentioned this earlier, and I skipped over it actually, but you are a licensed general contractor in California?
Yes.
That's awesome. For people who don't know, why is that important? Why is it important that you are a licensed general contractor?
It just means that I've gone through the exams and taken all the steps necessary and done construction in California. So I know a lot of how these buildings are built, and what it goes into being a contractor, more or less.
Mm-hmm. And then we touched it at a very high level. Let's take it 1 or 2 levels deeper in terms of what actually goes into a home inspection. So you mentioned things, basically all aspects of the building. Let's peel back the layers there. So the roof, the property, the electrical. Kind of give us a sense of what you're looking at when you look at a property.
Sure. So I go in the first. I walk on the exterior of the building, find out looking at drainage issues, looking for dry rot, things of that sort, and seeing how the envelope of the building actually is. Then I go to the roof, find out the roof how how worn it is and how well it's draining off the rain. And then proceed inward more or less. I will go from the inside kind of towards from the outside towards the inside, and then proceed going through every room, closet, every fixture, make sure every door handle works, and so forth. The biggest thing, annoying thing for a first-time home buyer or a home buyer in general is that they're stressed out moving into a new house and finding out these little things here and there that don't work or they don't work properly. So a full report, trying to give them as much information as possible in a complete picture.
Like you just said, you're literally turning every door handle, trying every light, testing sockets.
Yes.
Gotcha. Very cool. And how long does that take? I can imagine, depending on the size of the house, it could be a pretty long day.
Yeah, it's a thorough process. It usually takes about 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on the size of the house. It really all depends on what you find, and if I do find something that's an issue, further investigating it and trying to find a cause if I can, what's causing whatever it is.
Gotcha. And then, roughly speaking, if someone wants to do a property inspection for a home they're about to sell or a home that they own that they want to have something looked at, price ranges?
Price ranges vary depending on the size of the building. I think our starting price is around $500. It goes down like $350 for a condo. It's just because it's just the interior, but that's about the range. Maybe depending on the size of the building, it goes a little bit higher.
Gotcha. And then one question I always get from sellers. So in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, but definitely in San Francisco, a lot of times the seller is doing inspections before they put their home on the market. So normally what we see is two inspections. One is going to be the general property inspection, which Bob does, and then pest inspection to look at things like mold and dry rot and so on. So those are the two things that sellers typically do and put them in what's called the disclosure package and shares that with prospective buyers. So a question I get is, if I'm the owner of that house preparing to sell, do they need to be there during the inspection? Is there a preference if they're there or not? Sometimes, I can imagine if you're doing your job and the owner is looking over your shoulder or crawling under where you are, that could be a little bit annoying.
No, it's fine. I always recommend the client to be there if possible, especially first-time home buyers. Going through all the different systems. I don't mind it, or at minimum, I always try to get them to come towards the end of the inspection. Maybe not the entire 3-hour period, but maybe the last half hour I can explain all the different things I did find and explain some of the systems that I do see there and how they actually do function. And most importantly, answer any questions and concerns they may have with that. Gotcha.
And that's also another good point, is even if a seller does provide their own general property inspection, if a buyer is looking at purchasing that property or putting an offer together, they're well within their rights to have their own inspection as well. So that sounds like a common use case for you is the first-time buyer, for instance, wants to be extra sure, get an extra set of eyes on the property, and they will call you in.
Yes, absolutely.
Gotcha. And then what's the outcome of the inspection? So you're there for 2.5, 3 hours, you look at all the systems, you look at the entire building, the entire envelope, outside and in. What's the outcome of that work?
So we provide a full written report of the inspection stuff, what all the different findings I have, maybe some causes depending on what it is, and maybe some recommendations on some upgrades that for safety reasons are given as well.
And I can imagine that's a pretty chunky report.
Ours is fairly straightforward. Ours is maybe 25 to 30 pages at most.
Yeah.
We include a lot of photos, and it's very straightforward. I provide a maintenance manual with the inspection. So some of the maintenance things that you might find in some reports, I don't include necessarily, just because it's in our maintenance manual, which I give to every home buyer. Gotcha.
And then let's talk about properties and kind of some of the common things you're seeing. So a question I had for you, Bob, was, San Francisco has a lot of unique homes, a very rich history in terms of architecture and neighborhoods and different property types. and that being said, every property is unique, so I don't want to have you give a blanket generalization here. But in your opinion, when people are looking at that report, the outcome, what are some things that they normally hone in on that aren't that big of a deal normally?
Slight dry rot is a common thing. A lot of the houses out here have wood siding, and just being exposed to the elements. Dry rot's a very common thing in every house, and that's why we have termite and pest inspectors out there. But that's one of the most common things that people kind of sometimes freak out with.
Yeah.
A little bit of dry rot, which
they see the word
and
then they
yeah,
don't go crazy over it, but they sometimes overthink it or think too much into it. And again, it's property by property, so in some situations it may be an issue, but just because you see that term, there's different degrees, if you will, of cost and how problematic it could be.
absolutely.
And then what are some things that when you're looking at a property, that you spend extra time looking at, just to because that's an important thing here in the Bay Area?
Because of the age of the buildings, I spend a lot of times on any kind of retrofit I see on a new building. Retrofits, depending on the contractor, and sometimes it's DIY. Someone just did it themselves. It may not be up to code, may not be up to the standards of good
Like
workmanship.
adding a room, you mean, or what do you?
Adding a room, retrofitting a room, putting a kitchen in someplace, putting a bathroom someplace that originally wasn't designed to be there, and that type of all of a sudden people are taking down walls, adding walls and things of that sort. And especially being here in California, there's a lot of seismic issues that you had to be concerned about when doing that kind of work.
Gotcha. And that actually was an interesting point. I think we talked about this a few months ago, which was when you're looking at a property and doing your inspection, sometimes people do upgrades without permits, and maybe they don't follow all the codes, for instance. If someone is reading, a prospective buyer, for instance, is reading a disclosure report, and the seller says, hey, I added a room downstairs of my house and I did it without permits. How do you assess that?
I mean, we're not code inspectors, so the code changes every 3 years. So a building that was built 3 years ago could be issues that are out of code already. But depending on the scenario, of course, sometimes it's a big deal, and it depends on what kind of retrofit was done. You try to look to see what kind of workmanship was put into it, and those type of things. There's some signs that there could be some issues. And
so it sounds like you're definitely looking at it. I mean, you're not a code inspector, so you're not going to be look at the list of the height and all that stuff. But from a general safety perspective and livability, that's how you assess it.
Absolutely, yes.
Got it. So if a buyer comes to you and says, hey, Bob, I looked at the disclosures, they said there's a downstairs unit that was unpermitted. You're going to say, well, I looked at it, I reviewed it, and although it's not permitted, it's safe.
Yeah, to an extent. I'll look for the fire hazards and make sure there's an egress out of the building. There's things behind walls. We can't, of course, we can't look behind walls to the most extent. So, who knows what's behind it?
Gotcha. How about electrical?
Electrical. That's another big thing. A lot of these buildings are older. Some knob and tube wiring you'll see occasionally, or they're just back in the 60s, 70s when a lot of these buildings were built. Even they weren't. The electrical standards of today are a lot more than they were back then. So the electrical panel, a lot of times I see, is where people are looking to change their kitchen up or add a bit room or change some things up, and they find out that the electrical panel is already maxed out to what they already have. So that's always been certain.
Is there a way for a common, like a first-time buyer to know that, or without engaging someone like yourself? Like, how would they know it's maxed out?
Well, you can see there's an electrical panel. There's different outlets, more or less, or where the circuit breakers are. And if there's no more spaces, more or less, to put any more circuits in, then you're pretty much maxed out for the most part.
Got it. Anything else kind of that you're seeing that's common to San Francisco homes? Any common issues or things that you normally look at that you spend some time looking at there?
Typically just the older systems. There's all these homes are 100 years old, so the HVAC systems, or if there's an older system, typically I'll look at those. a little bit more carefully. An average heater furnace lasts about 20 to 30 years maybe. So if it looks like it was done 30 or 40 years ago, then we're looking at a new HVAC system in the near future.
And then say that someone is reading the report you guys publish and you guys see an issue. What happens next? Do you guys fix that, or what does a person do?
We don't actually fix it ourselves. We first identify what the issue is, trying to find a cause of it, and then we give some direction in terms of what to do next, whether it be a specialist to come in, take a further evaluation of it, or even give some suggestions on how to fix it if it's a small item that can be done.
And are there also in the recommendations different gradients in terms of severity?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are definitely more health and safety, those kind of things, and versus a faucet that might not be leaking a little bit.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, cool. And also, one thing I love about PCA and working with Bob is you guys have some really great warranty programs. So for the people watching this, kind of give us a sense of the warranty packages that you guys offer with your inspections.
Yeah, so with our inspections, because we're trying to give peace of mind to new home buyers and so forth, we offer a warranty package, which is first off a 90-day warranty on the structural and mechanical items, as well as a sewer and a mold protection of the structure, and then there's a 5-year leak protection of the roof. So if there's a leak in the next 5 years, and with a small deductible, that item could be warranted. And then also we also do a recall check on all the appliances. 1 out of every 10 homes has an appliance that has a recall on it. So we do a recall check, checking all of them against a database and informing the client if there is anything that needs to be fixed, and then the manufacturer actually has to.
So you're writing down the code and the model number of the fridge, the dishwasher, etc., putting it into your database, and then if it flags some sort of recall, the owner gets notified?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Exactly. So then.
And that comes with your inspection?
That comes with all of our inspections. So it's just another thing to keep in peace of mind. It's no cost to the to get it fixed. Of course, the manufacturer is required to fix it. So it's just an added thing to give the clients.
How about the 200% guarantee? I saw that on the website. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so we guarantee we stand behind all of our inspections. So 200% guarantee, meaning that if you're not satisfied with our inspection, and I'll pay for another inspector with the CREA stamp of approval that's been certified to do the inspection as well, if they're not satisfied with what we've found.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely.
Well, I'm sure that you guys do great work, so I'm sure that not many people are taking you up on that. But it's good to know that you guys do stand by your work, and if someone does have any issue at all, that you're willing to back it up with dollars too.
Absolutely.
Wow. All right. Well, that's awesome. Any final closing thoughts for the audience about anything home inspection, property inspection that they should be thinking about?
The only thing I can say is that if you're obviously there's a lot of buyer or seller inspections out here, and a lot of quick closes.
Yeah.
So I always recommend everyone to talk to the inspector that you are relying on in terms of their inspection, and really talk to them and see what they thought. There's a lot of things sometimes that inspectors are not able to include, or just don't include for whatever reason in their reports. So talking to an inspector and having them explain exactly what they found on all the different things is a very important step if you don't get your own inspection.
Yeah, so just to restate that, because I've done this too. So again, like we said a few minutes ago, a lot of times here in San Francisco, the seller is already ordering 2 inspections. One's a general property inspection, that thing that Bob does, and the other inspection is pest. So dry rot, other types of pest issues that they'll look at too. Those are the 2 main inspections. And if there are any questions that a buyer has, they can call the inspector and have them walk through the report and say, hey, Bob, you mentioned on page 10 you saw something wrong with this light switch. Tell me more about it. And that's well within the right to do. The other thing too is as buyers also have the right, and I encourage this, to have their own inspection as well. They're all third-party inspectors, so no one's on anyone's side. They're just giving their neutral third-party opinion on the condition of the property.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank Bob. I think maybe there was a question in there. I can't see it. Let's see. Let me go over there and forget it. All right, I think we are good. Well, I want to thank Bob Emmett for joining me today on this latest edition of our Facebook Live interview series. I'm going to put Bob's contact information in the comments. So if anyone has any questions, wants to reach out to him, Bob's very, very responsive, and he will take care of you. So thank you, Bob. And until next time, we actually have a couple more lined up just to give you guys a quick preview of what's happening. Next week, we're bringing back Ed Diaz, who Bob knows too, talking about lending. There are some changes that have happened the last few months post-election that are worth mentioning. And then in a few weeks, I also have some other guests lined up as well, talking about the business side of the business of the economy of the Bay Area, just because I think the jobs and the economy here is so closely tied to real estate that I want to have him talk about what he's seeing. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up next Thursday and the following Friday. Thank you, guys.